I'm Rob Shields, and this is Peace Talks, the podcast that covers everything to do with competitive jigsaw puzzling. Kelly Walter had a knack for staying out of the camera's eyes despite multiple top 10 appearances at U.S. Nationals and Worlds. That all changed at the recent 2025 U.S. Nationals competition when she found herself at the front of 3 different events. Kelly Walter, thanks for joining Peace Talks.
Thanks for having me.
You recently swept all 3 categories at the 2025 U.S. Nationals, and I want to hear all about it. But before we do that, let's begin at the beginning. What are your earliest puzzle memories?
So I think my earliest puzzle memories aren't actually my own. I've polled my family to see what they have. According to my mom, when I was like...
You're cheating.
Yeah. I just
Never ask a med school student a question that they could study for.
Yeah. I knew this one was coming. But my earliest memories, I just remember doing puzzles all the time as a kid. But according to my mom, like I have a really big family. Like my dad has 10 siblings. So like I have a ton of cousins.
Wow.
So at family events, we always had a puzzle out, especially if it was at our house. And when I was 2, they were doing like a 500 piece puzzle. And I was just like grabbing pieces and like putting them in occasionally, which was shocking to the rest of the family because I was a toddler.
Right.
But my sister's like 3.5 years older than me. We did puzzles a lot growing up. I don't remember that many of the floor puzzles. I talked to my mom. We had like a few, but they kind of just put 500,000 piece puzzles in our hands pretty early. So.
Wow. Were they intentionally trying to groom a world-class jigsaw puzzle person?
No, I think they just would like to keep me busy, and that was something that would do that.
Is that right? Did puzzles hold did they capture your attention more than other things, or was it just one of many strategies your parents brought into play?
Yeah, I did a lot as a kid. I think puzzles were something that I feel like I would go in and out of phases of doing them, but in most of my childhood photos, there, like in our living room, there was a puzzle on our coffee table.
Do you remember a time where you thought you were actually fast at putting together a jigsaw puzzle?
Yeah, I always felt that I was like pretty good, but like this is compared to my family members, so I feel like you really have no idea of what that means. But my parents, that was the one thing they let me do, was stay up and finish a puzzle. So like everyone else would go to bed and I would just get to stay up and finish. And like I used to like try and like race as fast as I could to finish, but it was just me there. So
wow, so you were sort of at least competitive with yourself from a pretty early stage.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I would move very fast, but like I at least had the idea in my head of like, oh, you have to finish this, like you're in some sort of competition.
And were any of the rest of your family equally competitive on the jigsaw front, or were they just pretty casual about it?
Pretty casual. My sister is very good at puzzles. She just doesn't like competition so much. So I've convinced her to compete with me a handful of times, but she doesn't really like the whole like racing as much, but she's pretty good at it. So
yeah, a lot of people aren't necessarily interested in turning what is a casual, relaxing pastime into a high pressure event for themselves. Is there a time where you felt like you really wanted to turn your casual pastime into a high pressure competitive environment?
I was more just curious. I think when I was like younger, like probably 9, 10, 11, like right when I had access to like our family computer, I feel like I'd like looked things up, but I never found like any sort of puzzle competitions because that would have been like around 2010. But I definitely like thought about it. But
so when did you discover speed puzzling?
I discovered speed puzzling, I think at the end of 2020. Karen and Tammy actually did a video with like a group on YouTube that now no longer exists, I think. And I watched them, and obviously Karen and Tammy, like Tammy was the world record holder. That's how they like present her. And Karen had, I think, probably just started doing the puzzle influencing stuff. I don't remember when she exactly started that. But once I found out about that, then I like searched and found USAJPA.
What was the first competition you entered?
I forget what the exact name of it was, but it was like a February competition. They did it for charity because the USAJPA, when they first started, would host their own competitions. So I think it was the second one that they ever had.
So your first competition was with the USAJPA?
Yep.
And how'd that go for you?
It was an interesting experience. So I think at the time I owned, like in my apartment in Boston, I had like maybe four puzzles. Because my dad had sent me a couple, and I think I might have bought one or two. But I hadn't done a 500 piece puzzle in years
What were you
because
doing?
like thousands. I
Oh,
thought anything less than that was boring because it would be finished too quickly. And my dad accidentally sent me like a large piece 300 because he didn't realize. So I did own one of those. But the competition was the first 500 I had done in years. I did it on like a rug in my room, so on the floor. And it happened to be this lovely image of deers and other forest creatures in a forest. And it was just a pretty difficult image.
uh-huh. So you wasn't perhaps the best introduction to competitive jigsaw puzzling for you.
Looking back at it, no, but now I can say that my first 500 piece competition took me over 2 hours because I think it took me like 2 hours and 4 minutes, if I remember correctly. So I can always say that and be like, look at where I started.
Was the next competition you entered, were you about the same speed, or was it by the time you were competing again, whatever was holding you back was sort of set aside?
Yeah, I think there was a lot of logistics that I did not realize for my first competition. Obviously, not doing it on a table was a bit of a hindrance. And also, I think just moving fast. I think that's something that can take kind of getting used to is just like
Mm.
consciously trying to move quickly. Yeah, there was quite a few things like piece management. I remember finishing that, and I think I finished like around half.
Half in terms of your placement, or
Yeah,
yeah.
I was halfway down the list. I don't
Okay.
remember. And I just remember thinking like, oh, there's so many things I could have done better.
But you were driven to do better.
Yeah, I was just curious to see how good I could get.
I'm guessing there were not necessarily a lot of options, but did you immediately enter another competition, or
I'm trying to, I think I signed up for Jonathan's. I remember like throughout 2021, I think I would do like one of Jonathan's competitions like every other month. That was like what I allowed myself because I was a college student. I didn't have that much extra money to go around. But yeah, I did like Jonathan's competitions every other month.
and did you practice any of the things that you had listed in your head of how to improve?
I practiced it in the competition. I remember like I would get so excited. I'd be like, "Oh, I get a new puzzle," because that was the only time I would ever get a new puzzle was through
Mm.
his competitions. And then I'd be like, I usually would kind of think of like one thing that I was going to try differently. I'm going to be like, oh, maybe I'll do the edge first, or maybe I won't do the edge first. Things like that.
Do you recall any of those early stage things where you were like, "Oh, this absolutely works for me, and this absolutely doesn't"?
Like nothing that because for a while, I went away from an edge first person. I think one of my biggest early hurdles was not getting stuck on a specific piece or a specific section. And I
Yeah,
think that still is something I have to remind myself like now.
really.
But yeah, every once in a while, like it definitely happens. I'm like, okay, you have to put that piece down, like move on from it. But yeah, that was a big thing to get over. It was just like, okay, we'll move on to that. Like we're going to get to it at some point, but it's going to be a lot easier to do that section when there's less pieces everywhere else.
And so you feel like that was something that you picked up relatively early on?
Yeah, I think that was definitely something I worked on when I first started because it's also just not very fun to like feel the panic of trying to like look at that one piece. Like I don't find that very exciting, but like learning how to kind of shift your focus from one thing to another like pretty quickly. I remember that was something I also tried to work on.
It's interesting because one of the things I noticed about your style is that you do seem to be sort of a rapid moving from one place to another sort of person. Like you're like, I'm going to do this. And then like, if that's not working for me, now I'm going to do this. Oh, I see where this goes. I'm going to work on that. Like in a way, it seems almost like ADHD sort of puzzling, right? I'm just going to follow my nose until I get there. But also it seems like it could be a very efficient way of working, right? Is that you're like, this doesn't work. I'm going to change my attention to something else. And now I see other possibilities. You know, if you were able to continually spot those, and it seems like you are, it doesn't seem like the worst approach to things. So is that a cultivated approach?
Yeah, I definitely think that's something that I've had to like build over time. But even if you like go look at like a difficult section, but then you kind of get an idea of that, then when you go back to the section you're previously working on, like with fresh eyes, I feel like it's pretty easy to kind of see where all the pieces go. Like it's with teams. Like sometimes you're working on a section and then you pass it off to your teammate and they get it right away because they just have fresh eyes on it. Like I feel like I kind of try to do that in my individual puzzle, like where I go to a different section, or like maybe I'll start doing the edge, or maybe I'll start sorting for a little bit. And then I'll go back to what I was working on, and suddenly some things will start to click. Sometimes they don't too. So it really just depends.
Do you ever just, when you're individually puzzling, physically move?
No.
No. All right. So that level of perspective, you get all the new perspective you need from switching your focus to something else.
Yeah.
It looks like you started doing speedpuzzle.com early in speedpuzzle.com's life. The first one I have you showing up for is number 23. And I forget where we are at this point, but we're in hundreds. And you placed 8th there. Your next one was 3rd. That seems like it must have been fairly motivating.
Yeah, it was exciting for me. Because like this was a thing that I just did by myself. Like you log into your Zoom, you do this puzzle with all these random strangers, and then you like finish your time and you see, and it was exciting to see myself like move up. I remember when I got 3rd, I was like so excited. I was like, I didn't even know this was possible. But yeah, it was just kind of like a fun thing to see how far I could get up the leaderboard or how fast I could go.
So at some point you decided that you'd sign up for the 2022 Nationals for an in-person competition. Your first in-person competition, correct?
Yes.
What made you want to do that?
I think I was just kind of excited to see what it was like. And thank you to my parents. They went with me. We kind of made a trip out of it because I only did the individual event. I think I just kind of wanted to see how I would do. Like I was applying to medical school at the time, and I just kind of wanted to see how I would do, like stacked up against everyone.
And how'd you do?
I got 4th.
Was that at all a surprise?
Yes. I remember I went and sat down at the table, and Susanna from Ryman from the Bay Area was sitting next to me, and we had like been around each other on some competitions. And I remember sitting down and we were chatting, and she goes, I mean, they put you at like, I was at table 10. And they're like, shoot, they put you there for a reason. Like, you're going to do great. And I was like, I don't know. We'll see.
Did you feel pressure?
That's a good question. I definitely was nervous. So for context, my preparation for nationals in 2022 was I did one puzzle every day the week leading up to before I left. And I bought one new Ravensburger 500. So needless to say, a lot less preparation than people mostly do these days, including myself.
Right.
Because I just didn't know. I had no
Sure.
idea. So I remember being so nervous because this was back in the time where you had to open the plastic on the box. So that was something that I had like one chance to practice at, and was like, okay, well, I hope this
one
goes
new puzzle.
well.
We used to keep puzzles around just so that we could practice that from time to time.
Yeah, that was the most intimidating part, was like the whole opening, because I knew I was going to be like slower than everyone else at that part. And then, yeah, I don't know. I just kind of wanted to see where I would end up. It wasn't really I had no idea how I was going to do.
How was it doing a competition in person versus the online ones you had done?
It was exciting. I remember like the cameras, although if you watch back the 2022 Nationals, I don't know if you have, I mean, you were there, right?
Mm-hmm.
My camera time only comes after I complete the puzzle, unless you're looking in the background of the shots. So thankfully I did not have the camera pressure that I think a lot of people can be overwhelmed by in their first competitions. But I was right next to like there was like a section of where people could like spectator section.
Yes.
And so that was a little much because there was a lot of people there.
Typically wear headphones when you're competing. Did you have headphones on? And was it just like the physical bodies in the area, or was it the noise and chatter?
Yeah. Like I think just having people in your periphery, like moving around. And then Susanna, like we had talked about it a little bit beforehand. Like she did that. So the San Diego puzzle, she did the entire sky and sun first. So I remember like looking over and like I had done the buildings, and I was like, Oh, that's interesting.
Because this is probably, correct me if I'm wrong, this is probably the first time you got to see other people's approach to puzzling.
Oh yeah, I think like occasionally I would look up in the online competitions. Like I would take a look at the Zoom screen to see how other people are doing. But other than that, no.
You mentioned that you finished off camera, and I feel like at least for until relatively recently, you have a skill about finishing a puzzle when nothing's watching you finish a puzzle. I was watching a replay of, maybe was it the most recent Worlds, where your finish isn't behind Mercedes. Like
Hmm.
the camera is actually watching Mercedes, but in the background you can see you finish. And I'm like,
Yep.
I don't know how you constantly evade the cameras like that.
Yeah, I think the most notable one for me was my first competition at Worlds in 2023, which I know I'm jumping ahead, but I'll just talk about that
We
briefly.
have a very tight timeline we're following here.
But in that one, like the camera wasn't even on me at all until after I finished. And I think the way that I rationalized it was that was back when I more was not doing the edge first, like as a rule.
Mm,
So I think everything I was doing looked a little too chaotic and it just looked like nothing was together because all
right.
the pieces were kind of separate. And I also think I speed up a lot at the end.
Yeah, you do. I was going to ask you about that. Is that something that you intentionally do, or is that like an adrenaline rush, or is that just like less information to deal with? Because I watched you sort of pace with other people and then sort of outstrip them. Comes to the last, like, I don't know, 50 or so pieces.
Yeah, I think it's mostly just like when at that point, there's less information, less noise. So when I pick up a piece, like in my head, I should know where it goes within like a second or two, or maybe three. And if I don't, it's going back down. Like I'm not
Mm-hmm.
like, I think it's just kind of like that short term memory, like find it or don't. If you don't find it right away, just put it down and move on to the next one. Cause when you get to that point, like, at least for me, I should know where most of the pieces go. I wish I could speed up earlier. That's something I probably should work on. But
So when you went to nationals for the first time, I imagine you met other puzzlers in person.
yeah, it was interesting because I had been doing like, as you said, like I had been doing okay in like the Jonathan's competitions. Like I knew other people like might know who I am, and I remember getting to the table and Faith Taylor on the board was sitting there, and she like I told her my name, and she's like, "Oh, I like recognize your name," and like that was just a very exciting thing because I obviously knew who she was. Like I had
Yeah.
been on the JPA Zoom calls and such. So yeah, it was really exciting. And then I kind of just stayed with my parents. Like there wasn't as big of a convention as there was in 2023. So I kind of like I didn't watch the pairs or the teams. I mostly just stayed with my parents, and then I met some people at the closing ceremonies.
Were you much engaged in the online community, like with the Instagram?
No, I think I had one at the time, but I didn't use it. I think I was a little intimidated by meeting people online. I don't know if it's like the age that I grew up in and like that was very advertised to us, but I think the thought of meeting people online over meeting them in person was like kind of scary to me.
Interesting. So I am curious then. So you were a individual in the U.S. Nationals. Fast forward ahead to sort of Worlds to 2023, which is the next major competition you were involved in. Suddenly you have pairs and teams. How did you get connected with the people for those things?
Yeah, so I was lucky enough, even though I finished fourth, they still interviewed me on the live stream. And I think I made like some comment because I think nationals were supposed to be in June in 2023 because they were in 2022, but then they moved it back to September. So I made like some comment about how I was hoping to be in Spain in June, and then just kind of left it at that. I met some people, but I didn't really hear anything at that nationals. And then I forget what time it was. I think around like January, Andrea Kyle had reached out and was like, "Hey, like, are you looking for a team for Worlds in 2023?" But at that time, I was still in the interview process for medical school, and I just really had no concept of what my schedule was going to be in the next year, where I was even going to be living.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to commit to anyone until I knew that whole plan. So I kind of just tabled it. And then I get to medical school in July. I look at my schedule and I see that our fall break, because we start super early, that our fall break falls like the week of Worlds. And I was like, of course. Like, I told people I couldn't go, but then like it would aligned perfectly. And then I think it was August, like early August, Andrea Kyle reached out to me again because one of her teammates wasn't able to go anymore, and asked me if I could go. And I had just had this realization that I was able to go. So I like sat on it for a day or two. And then I was like, why not? Why not? It aligns so perfectly that why not?
Why not last minute travel to Spain?
Yeah, it was very impulsive in my head, but like I had all the time off that I needed, like everything aligned. So
it's almost like the universe was telling you need to go to this.
Exactly.
I would jump back to Nationals real quick before we lose that. There's a couple of things that in your interview at Nationals that I sort of want to touch base on. One is that you lost a piece as part of that competition.
Mm-hmm.
I assume that makes you vigilant for never losing a piece again.
Well, so fun fact, it was because it was in the bag. Mm-hmm. And that was back when volunteers would pick up the bags to throw away, like the clear plastic bag with the pieces come in. So I still don't have the piece. USA JPA brought out they released the puzzles again, like sometime after that Nationals. So I bought a second copy. So I have a complete copy, but I do still have my original copy that is missing a piece.
You also talk about the border as something that you do as you go at that time. And it sounds like you've sort of had a evolving relationship with doing the edge of the puzzle. Can you talk about how that's sort of gone from time to time?
Yeah, I think like when I first really started thinking about speed puzzling back then, which I wasn't even thinking about it that much, I realized other people weren't doing the border. So then I was like, oh, that must be the secret. Mm-hmm. So I think I would sort the edges. I don't even remember. I think I did sort the edges, but then I would just as I said, kind of pick them up as I go. And then I really had that strategy for quite some time. I think up until Worlds of 2024 was when I switched over to a more conscious, do the border first, not policy, but approach.
And did you choose that because it served you well?
Yeah, I think the puzzles that we got at Worlds were more conducive to that, other than the Monaco one in my prelim.
Which had a white border all the way around it.
Yeah, which you could build, but it was not that was not my most successful puzzle. But
well, yeah. So that brings me to actually, that was the finals puzzle, right?
No, that one was the Monaco was my prelim.
Oh, the prelim. Oh yeah.
You're thinking about the chairs.
I am thinking about the chairs. Get out of my head. So the reason I'm thinking about this, so just to circle back, so you come away from Nationals. I assume you had a very eye-opening experience. It sounds like you were interested in doing more competitive puzzling. You go back to doing Jonathan's competitions. The next competition I have you down for, which is some time after that, you finished 28th. And it is unusual because you have never, except for that time and the chairs puzzle, which we're about to talk about, finished below 10. So I'm curious as to whether those placements tell us something important about what works for your style and what doesn't.
What image is that? Is that the triangles?
It is. It's the triangle gradients, a buffalo puzzle, if I remember correctly.
I don't know why. I finally got rid of that puzzle last year. I think it's something with the diagonal lines. I don't know, but I really struggled. Yeah, it's an Amy or who's Josie Lewis. Yeah, I was shocked that Josh was able to finish that in under 40 minutes.
Josh Trauger.
Congrats to him.
Did that trip you up at all?
I don't at the time. I don't remember moving particularly slow. I don't think I thought it felt okay for me, but then I was shocked at how fast everyone else was able to finish it. And I remember trying it a few times after that, and I couldn't break 50 until maybe this last year. I don't know Me and that puzzle do not mix.
Did you care terribly much about your placements? Like, I guess that's even a question through to now. I was talking with somebody the other day and they're like, yeah, I've never seen Kelly get stressed out or appear particularly worried about any puzzle that she's in the middle of. Is this all just good fun in your head, or are you masking it well? Or
I mean, I don't know. Puzzles are my hobby. I have enough stress with being in medical school that I really do endeavor to keep it a fun hobby, while also spending time on it and like improving.
and you do take it seriously.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think my only goal is that I have fun, and I have fun when I like don't get caught up or don't focus too much on the surroundings. So I don't really like, I care a little bit how I finish, but I mostly care that I complete the puzzle well. And usually I have more success when I do that. And I think I've kind of figured that out in the last year on how to do that. And by doing it well, I mean like just not focusing on kind of all of the noise. If we talk about some of the competitions, I can tell you how I previously had gotten caught up in some of the noise. I think the triangle puzzle, we just don't agree. I'm not great at gradients. I'm not great at gradients. So that one wasn't really a mental thing. It was
I like that you and that puzzle had a conscious uncoupling.
Yeah.
Like, no, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to go our separate ways. Mm-hmm. So then let's move forward to Worlds 2023 then. At this point, you're at the ripe old age of 22, having competed for a while now. Mm-hmm. You went into individuals. You've done well in your initial heat. You've done well in the semi. And then this puzzle comes up. This is a puzzle lots of people do not care for. It's notorious in my mind. Tell me a little bit about what the puzzle is, like help people understand what the image is, and then talk a little bit about how you related to it over the course of that particular event.
Yeah, so this image, I think it's a place in Greece or Italy, and it's basically like an outdoor cafe. It's just a bunch of tables and chairs at the bottom, like 40%. And then there's like the cafe building is like the middle, 20-30%. And then the top is like a sky roof line. And then there's some green vines in the middle. And this is one of those, I think this is the first time where I really realized that I really got in my head. So I was in the second row. I was at table 10 because I had done well. I like was hoping that I could like maybe keep my top 10. Like I was pretty optimistic as to how I was going to do. But at this point, I really hadn't faced that much like mental adversity in a puzzle competition up to this point, at least in an individual competition. But I remember my first thought, and I will say, if your thought is ever thinking about what other people are going to think of you, it's probably a bad thought. My thought was, I'm not going to do the sky first. I'm going to look silly.
Interesting.
Which then when you look back, the sky is like maybe 20 pieces and everyone did it first.
And you thought you'd look silly for what reason?
I don't know. I like had this thought in my head that like people who do the sky for, I don't know. I really don't know where I got that from. I don't remember, but that was my first thought. Yeah, that kind of derailed me. I don't even remember. I think I started with like the roof, and I did the sky at some point because I saw someone else was doing it. I could never get in a rhythm with that puzzle. That's one that I've still done a few times, and I don't think I've ever gotten below Alejandro's time, even to this day. There's something about the legs of the chairs. I just can't see it. Maybe it's something having to do with the overlapping lines. I don't know, but I will never forget, like, there wasn't very many of us in the front because it kind of, people in the front finish and then it like trickles back. And I was sitting there for a while, and a judge or a camera person had been like kind of walking around my table as I had like probably 40 pieces of chair left. And I wanted to be like, you can come back in like 10 minutes. This is going to take me a while. Yeah, I think that just was not my image. And I also got in my head.
Yeah, because you referred back to this the following year in an interview at Worlds where you're like, yeah, I was, what did you say? You said something about you really threw yourself off in that puzzle. Mm-hmm. And so that was just having outside expectations about how you should be doing the puzzle. I mean, some part of that is, like you said, it's just not your thing. Like that puzzle doesn't line up with you, but there seemed like there was more to it than that. And that was it was primarily your expectations around how one ought to have done that puzzle.
I think I still didn't really have that much like of a personal like style because I hadn't really thought that much about how I puzzle up until that point because that was the Worlds that I met Andrea Pang, and she, I will credit her, is the one who actually made me start thinking about how I puzzle. She would ask me, and I did not have answers to her questions. Yeah, I think I just hadn't thought that much, and I didn't really have a strong direction of where to go, and I think I just kind of got lost.
This is the first time I noticed how you tend to puzzle really close to the puzzle. And it seems to be because you're focusing on a very small window of the entire puzzle. But yet I see you pick up things and put them in very different parts of the puzzle. Is this a strategy? Is this a result of just kind of who you are and how you play?
I don't know. It's a really good question because I feel like I'm the only one that does it. So
you're one of the closer players. Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, I think part of it has to do with the fact that I got glasses last like January because I started losing like my far vision, which really then shouldn't affect puzzling. So I don't know. I think I just need to go talk to an optometrist. I think that's my best explanation for it.
You think it might be just a legitimate vision problem?
It could be. I also think I do focus on smaller elements, and I just find that I can see it better that way, I guess.
Sure. I mean, I don't mean to imply that there's anything wrong with it.
Oh, no.
Because if that, clearly you're doing okay. Far be it for me to judge how you approach the puzzle. But it is just, it's a curiosity. It's one of those things where I'm like, that's interesting. Let's talk more about that.
Yeah, I'm curious too, because like I don't do that at home. It could be a lighting thing too.
Oh, sure.
Sometimes I have gotten some darker images in nationals, and I think that also plays a part of it too.
What's interesting about the end of that puzzle is that, at least as far as the image you presented to the camera, you look like it was an effort, but you weren't particularly defeated by it. You're like, that sucked, but what do you do?
Yeah, I think I was kind of over it at that point. Like I had looked at chair legs for too long. Yeah, I think I was disappointed, but I was mostly just disappointed at myself that I let like outside factors influence what I was thinking. Yeah, I think that was mostly what my takeaways from that was.
And did you make a conscious effort after that to address that?
Yeah, I did. But I will say I don't think I had success with it until Worlds the following year.
Is that just because sometimes retraining your brain takes some time, or is that because like you had some sort of epiphany?
Yeah, well, and we'll get to this, but
we could jump ahead.
Well, I was gonna say I think I had wanted that like noise like that were expectations of what other people had of me to not influence, but then I got to the nationals final in 2024. And then I let other outside noise get in. But that was for a whole other reason. So
do you find that you are more successful when you have your head game under control, or do you find that it's sort of generally fine, but occasionally you have to watch out for some things?
100%. I think Alice talked about this too, but like the pressure in an individual final, I think is something that I've never experienced something like that in my life. Like it's really hard to keep your kind of head in the game almost, like, and just focused on the task at hand because there's so many other things that are going on. There's so many cameras. Like we all know that this is being live streamed and that people are going to talk about us
in real time.
Yeah. So I think there's just so many external factors other than the fact that you just have to complete the puzzle presented to you as fast as you can.
Fair to say that you, like other people, find it's more readily manageable with pairs and teams?
Yeah. I will say the not using music, I think, then causes me to like just talk a lot because I need something to tune out the rest of the noise. But it's definitely very helpful when you have another person there.
And this reminds me, one of the things you said in an interview, which I thought was really interesting, is that you said that having new songs come on midway through a puzzle is helpful in kind of sustaining, not getting into like ruts. Is that like because new tracks remind you to sort of change up, or how does that work?
Yes, but also it kind of just helps like take my mind a little bit out of what I'm doing. Like a new song will come on, I'll focus on that for a second, and then maybe I'll get like a fresh perspective on what I'm looking at. I don't know. I think it's just kind of a distraction technique almost to kind of just have myself focus on the music and the puzzle. So then everything else like kind of can't get into the equation.
Sure. I could imagine that you were talking about like if you're sort of finding challenges in one section, then move to another section. And I can imagine that like a song change could be a moment of sort of zooming out in your focus really quick, and being like, oh, I'm listening to a song, and then zooming back in your focus. And even that could be like, it sounds like is a way of sort of retuning your focus on the puzzle.
Yeah. And I will say, I think differently than from what I've understood a lot of people, I don't have like a set playlist. Like I make a playlist, but then I hit shuffle.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know what's coming next. And my playlist, it's mostly like sped up pop songs, but like there are some like songs that are not as sped up and there are some that are a little faster. So I think it's kind of exciting when a new one comes in. Like if a slower quote unquote song comes on, then maybe I'll like take a step back. And then if a faster one goes on, like I don't know, maybe start moving faster. I don't know. But I kind of just like the spontaneity of the songs that will come on.
Yeah, I'm a huge random playlist person myself. This does remind me, though, I want to take a minute and a half divergence here to understand what a sped up pop song is, because you mentioned this. I think I asked you that very question on the live stream at the most recent Nationals. Didn't fully understand it. So you said that they're like Spotify songs that are a pop song just sped up?
Yeah. Yeah.
Like they just took it and literally just increases beats per minute?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think TikTok probably popularized it. But yeah, it's a lot of that. And then like EDM is mostly what I have on my playlist.
So also in that first Worlds competition, you were paired with Amber Haglund Pagel.
Mm-hmm.
How'd you connect with her?
Well, when I joined my team, which shout out to my first team, Andrea Kyle, Don Rasmussen, Kyle Kosin. They were amazing. They like
quite the team.
Yeah, it was really great. They like all had a Airbnb already. So like I didn't have to worry about housing when they asked me to join their team.
Was it intimidating going to Spain and to live with these quasi random strangers for a week?
It was, but we had like some Zoom like meetups where we all got like the same puzzles and like raced, which I thought was a really good way to get to know a team that you may not be able to practice with because we're all over the country. But yeah, they were great. They like kind of took me under their wing the entire weekend because they all traveled with people and I came by myself. So it was nice to have people around. But Andrew and Don are obviously a pair. And then I believe that year Kyle paired with Faith Taylor. And so when I joined, they were like, oh, we'll look around for a teammate. And just because I was like, oh, if I'm going, I might as well do pairs. And
Sure.
Amber didn't have a pair at that point. And I was like, yeah, sure. I don't know. I kind of just want to experience what the whole thing will be like. And I always want to apologize because we had Ludacris Library for our prelims, which is a Colin Thompson. I'd never done one before. And me and Lines, that puzzle, I really did not like it. So that one was a bit of a struggle, but we had some more fun in the Boston 21-49 final.
I have here in my notes that at the end of that first pairs heat, you're breathing hard, which looks like you would just finished taking a run or something, which, is a good reminder that people don't expect a jigsaw puzzle competition to be particularly physically taxing, but it can be.
Yeah, it depends. That one, I really just felt lost, that entire image. I don't know. I just really could not grasp the idea of that image. So I think that one probably expended some more energy than others. But yeah, it really depends. I think I've gotten better at controlling my heart rate because, it's like certain sports, they like monitor the athlete's heart rate as they're competing. Yeah. And like if you're able to keep it steadier, they usually do better. So I think there's like certain ways that I've gotten to get myself to not get as worked up before competitions.
Had you ever done a pair or a teams competition before?
Yes. So my sister and I convinced her, we did it's the online puzzle twist competition. I forget exactly. It's like the Derby, Winter Derby or something like that. We did that over Christmas one year. It was like 1,000-piece puzzle twist. But other than that, no.
So just with your sister?
Yes.
I'm always curious as to people's first experience in a team where there are many other sets of hands in the way. Did you find that particularly challenging, or did you just sort of flow right into it?
I didn't find it challenging. And I'll go back to the fact that growing up, I have a very large extended family. So there was usually like 6 to 8 people around the puzzle table. And I usually was like going around because I'd find a piece and I'd be like, oh, it goes over there. So then I have to go like run around and like put it over. So I do think I had some practice with that growing up. You can ask Karen Puzzles, how many times she edited out me saying sorry in our team's final. I still will not let that go. But
you won't let go which part?
Saying sorry all the time.
Oh, okay. So you were a person who's going to apologize every time.
Yeah, I try not to, but it just is inevitable.
And then do you apologize for apologizing?
Yeah, occasionally.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll apologize to myself.
What was it like walking into the Millennium Dome the first time?
There's definitely a lot of people. I think we went for like opening ceremonies. I think it was really cool to see how many people like different living all over the globe were there just for puzzling. That was a very exciting experience.
You had said in an interview that you had hoped that your team would, I think your team in general had said the sort of their goal in finals was 5th or better, and you guys finished 5th. That must have felt well.
Yeah, I was very excited. I think, kind of really didn't know how we were going to do until we got there, because we didn't practice until like we got to Spain. And yeah, I think we had high hopes and we met those, and that was pretty exciting.
Kyle said it took a few practice puzzles before your team found its chemistry. Yeah,
definitely. I think also me being new to a team, it was like a little interesting to kind of figure out. But I remember that beach puzzle from our prelim, like I think we flew through that one. Like that was one of our best. Like that was a good practice for us before the final.
And I was watching the final, and you guys seemed to decide on which puzzle to do first really quickly. Like it didn't even seem like it took a whole 2 seconds.
Yeah, I can tell you I did not make that decision because if it was up to me, I would sit there for like 10 seconds. On both teams I've had where you have to make that choice, I always like start talking and then someone else is already like, I would spend way too much time trying to figure out, like, I need to have someone on the team who's just gonna be like, we're doing this one and it's okay.
Is that because you want to do some analysis on it, or?
Yeah, I just don't think I can think that. Like, there's too many thoughts in my head of why we should do one over the other. And yeah, the dog puzzle, the orange dog puzzle was very scary.
So is it in some way a relief to just have somebody be like, this is what we're doing?
Yeah. Oh, I need someone else to make the decision.
I officially won't be making the following decision.
Well, and the funny part is I always like have some commentary, and by the time I say something, it's already gone. But that's how it should be, because there should be no commentary. It should just be a decision, because there's no point in wasting time.
And had you guys had any conversations about how to make puzzle choices before then?
Yeah, I think we had decided that we were going to do the harder one first, which is it was a very obvious choice in that finals.
Anything else on your first Worlds that's worth talking about?
I do want to mention the world record attempt.
Oh, the Guinness Book of World Records. Yeah, talk about that.
That was really fun. Charlie, who's always at Worlds, was looking for people to do the competition. And back in that year, it was much more packed day. I think there was finals on that day, if I remember correctly. So a lot of people weren't as excited to do it because it was going to be a 2,000-piece puzzle that we had never seen before, and 8 people who didn't even all speak the same language trying to work on it. But it was really fun. I remember Katya and I were like working at the bottom, and she was just talking to herself in German, and I thought that was really funny. And then, yeah, Teresa and Marquetta were there as well, and that was great because I think at one point I just decided I was going to do all the trees, so I was like, can I just have green? I was like, and everyone looked at me and they were like, why do you want green? And I was like, well, someone's got to do it. So, but that was a really cool experience, just getting to meet people from all over and puzzle with them was really fun.
And I forget, were there multiple teams trying to do it simultaneously?
Yes, we were the only ones that successfully completed it, I believe.
Did you go buy a copy of the Guinness Book of World Records after that?
No. I've heard that like the accomplishment is in there, but our names aren't, is what I've been told. But I have not sought it out.
So then you come home from Worlds with what seems like a pretty successful outing at it. But then you're back into the world of actually having to go to school and do all these other things. What was that like? What was sort of re-entry like, if it was a big deal at all? And how did you interweave over the course of the sort of next few months puzzling in an ongoing way with what I imagine have to be fairly high demands of schoolwork?
Yeah, that's a good question. Funnily enough, I got back on, I think, Monday night, and Tuesday morning I had like an exam, but it's an exam where you have to like interview a patient and do a physical and all of that. So I remember I just stayed on Spain time and woke up at like 4 a.m. to study for that. So I was right back to medical school, right, the next day. But I definitely would do puzzles more. Oh, I remember after I got back. So Kati, I think before that,
Kati
Worlds, yes, had done where she like interwove some puzzles. Like the Ravensburgers. So I was curious to see if any of mine had the same cut. I probably owned like 15 Ravensburger 500s at the time. So I think I did pretty much all of them and then tried to figure out which ones. And it's not just them having the same cut, but the die has to be put in the exact same spot because sometimes like the pieces kind of match up, but the die is a little off, so it won't work. But I think I found that with like a few of mine. So that was like a fun endeavor. And then when I was breaking all of them apart, because the 15 Ravensburger 500s were just stacked one on top of another, like completed on the corner of my table. And at some point I accidentally mixed them all up. So then I had like a really fun time just trying to do them in all these like mixed up pieces, if that makes sense. So I kind of had a little bit of fun with puzzling after that and was not really as focused on speed for quite some time.
Do you often do bigger scale puzzles?
I would if I could.
I was going to say you prefer, I believe, 1,000 over 500. So it seems like bigger puzzles might be more interesting for you. It's just a time thing.
I rarely do a 500 casually at home. I mostly, if I go to pull a puzzle out, it's 1,000 or bigger.
Need Kiara to ship you one of her 20,000 puzzles.
Oh, I did. I won the 9,000 piece Disney puzzle.
Oh, yeah.
So I did do that one last year.
And was that a lot of fun?
It was fun. I think it took a lot more of my time away from school than it should have. Mm-hmm. I should have been focusing on school. Instead, I had this 9,000 piece puzzle sitting in my house, but it was quite fun.
So at this point, we're sort of post Worlds 2023, heading towards Nationals 2024. Sounds like your schoolwork is taking most of your time. I imagine you're still doing online competitions. Are you engaged with the folks that you had made connections with at the other competitions?
Yeah, some. I had met Andrea Pang and Clara, her daughter, at Worlds. And I think Andrea and I had kind of talked about Nationals 2024 because Clara's in school and wasn't going to be able to make it. So we definitely kept in touch. I went up to California for their state tournament in November of that year and convinced my sister and her friends to compete with me.
Oh, neat.
Yeah, that was really fun. That was, I think, one of the only times that I've just gotten to watch a competition because I couldn't convince my sister to do pairs. So I just got to watch the pairs competition, which was really fun. But yeah, that was really nice. Becca invited a bunch of us over to her house, Becca Taylor. So I got to meet a bunch of the California people. And that was kind of where my team for Nationals 2024 kind of shaped up a little bit. So I felt like I was adopted by the Northern California speed puzzlers.
Yeah, my sense is that if you're not careful, they will do that to you.
Yeah. Well, it helps that my sister lives in San Francisco, so she's very proximate. So it's a good excuse to go visit her and then see all my puzzle friends as well.
So how did you do in that competition?
I think I won.
So out-of-state person just saunters in, wins the competition, off you go.
Yeah, I love that image. It was a Cobble Hill of, I think it was called Loon Lake. It was like a cabin and some water and some sky. That was something I would pick out for myself to do for fun. And I really enjoy the challenge of a random cut in a competition. So yeah, it was just a good competition for me.
All right, another tangent. So random cut. I was listening to somebody, like an old interview where somebody was talking about the idea that random cuts are harder if you're a competitive speed puzzler because they make you take the shape of the piece into account, which is something I'd never thought of as a non-highly competitive speed puzzler. Like, to me, random cuts are fun because they add another component that I can try and solve a problem with. So I'm curious as to your perspective on that. Does that make a difference? And if so, how?
I think random cuts pose a fun challenge because you aren't exactly sure which way the piece goes. Like, if that makes sense. Like when you have a Ravensburger, like, you know that it's going to go one of four ways pretty much.
Yeah.
Whereas random cuts, it kind of can go in any direction.
Right. It can be rotated anyway.
Exactly. So it's like, and sometimes there's like fake edge pieces that where you think it's an edge and not an edge. So I think it's just, it requires a little bit more thinking, which I think is a little more interesting.
So it doesn't put you off?
No, I think it's a fun challenge because everyone's working with the same thing.
So when did you and Andrea formalize your pairing?
I don't know when it was exactly official.
There was no documentation, nothing in writing?
No, not that I can think of. Maybe when I went up to the California state, because then after that, I think I visited another time before Nationals, sometime in early 2024. And that was when we practiced again as pairs and I believe as a team too.
The first time I heard that you were pairing with Andrea, I was like, uh-oh, everybody's in trouble.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting thing, like pairs, because there's so many established pairs. There's people who kind of switch it up a lot. Like a lot of people do just have their pair and they kind of keep it that way. So if you don't have one, then you kind of feel like left out a little bit, if that makes sense. I don't know. It's kind of tricky. Like teams switch up a lot, whereas pairs, I feel like you find your person and you kind of stick with it for a while, which I've been lucky enough that I was able to find Andrea. So.
Yeah, well, I mean, you could argue both directions there. She was lucky enough to find you as well. Like, you're both amazing puzzlers. And the thing that, the thing that made me think everybody was in trouble is that you're both amazing puzzlers and the combination of you would be pretty formidable. Interesting to see. I was not wrong. How did the first few practices with Andrea go?
Yeah, I think we've talked about this before. So our first time puzzling together, our team had gotten together. Our team was Kelly Burr, Becca Taylor, me, and Andrea.
The Peace Corps?
Yes. And we had gotten together, and our first go of a pairs puzzle, it didn't go that great. There's no really explanation for it. But that first day was not so great. And I think that was the only practice time we had for that visit. And then I visited again and we practiced as pairs and it was much more successful. And
were there any explicit adjustments that you did? Y'all did, not just you specifically?
Yeah. I have a hard time remembering. I think just getting more comfortable with each other. Like, I mean, Andrea was used to puzzling with Clara, who's her daughter. And she's like, oh, well, there's things that like I might say to Clara that I don't want to like say, like not in a bad way, but, and like, yeah, I think just more the comfortability of it all. And also Andrea had a lot of questions of like things that I would think about, like, oh, do you think, I can't think of a specific example, but like, and this is what I'm talking about where like she made me start thinking about how I puzzle because I really had no explanation for why I did certain things. And one question that I still have a hard time answering, which I think I've now gotten better at, is like, what are you good at and what do you struggle with? Like, I did not know the answer for a long time. And I think it was because I didn't really analyze what I was doing. I kind of just would go with the flow.
Sure. So I would love to hear the answers to those questions.
Yeah, I think I'm good at busy puzzles. I think that's kind of been proven at this point. Yeah, I guess that's my best. Like, I like blues and greens, which I know colored doesn't really make that much of a difference, but to me it does. I'm not good at like really tricky lines, like that chairs puzzle, like Ludicrous Library, things like that. I find pretty difficult.
So once you started thinking about how you puzzle, did you start thinking about how you might change how you puzzle?
Yeah. Yeah. Like that was when like the whole edge thing, because Andrea always does an edge first. That's a running joke we have a little bit. But she always does the edge first.
She does the edges, you do the sorting. Yep.
Yeah. Whenever we can. But even an individual, she always does the edge first. Whereas at that point, I wasn't really doing an edge first. So like thinking about how I was going to incorporate that, thinking about like sorting, like do sort, like I used to sort a lot more than I do now, like a bunch of piles right away.
Mm-hmm.
Because I think Kristen would do that more. I think
I was
she's,
going to say this is what I think of as the Kristen Toof method.
yeah,
Right?
we're sorting more up front. Whereas then I kind of straight away and I would sort like one or two things and then kind of leave the rest of the pieces. But I think I really resisted against like analyzing how I puzzled because I did want to keep it a fun hobby. But then I realized that I still can think about it, but just not let it consume me, and still keep it enjoyable.
Do you find enjoyment in optimizing your capabilities, or do you find that it is more work?
I do enjoy it. I think there are certain things that I don't like flipping pieces. I'm not the best at flipping pieces quickly.
Do you do a full flip? I actually couldn't tell.
Yes, I used to not. I used to get really distracted halfway through my flip, and then I would start building. So that is something that I definitely had to learn. Instead of taking 8 minutes to get all the pieces flipped over because I would get distracted, just flipping everything over right away, get it out of the way. Because as a child, it was my least favorite part.
Sure.
It still
Yep.
is flipping over all the
Yep.
pieces. But like to me, practicing just flipping pieces isn't very interesting. That's not very fun for me. So I definitely have thought about it and I've probably gotten a little bit better, but it's not something I'm just going to sit at home and work on. Whereas like watching what other people do and kind of taking aspects of their, how they build a puzzle, I think is a little more interesting to me in terms of improving how I puzzle.
Yeah, you mentioned that in an interview as well, that you've sort of taken some things that other people have done and tried to incorporate them into your process. I'm curious as to what things you have attempted to take on that worked and what things that you might have tried that didn't work.
Yeah, I think one thing, and I know other people have talked about this too, but like where people put their pieces while they're doing the puzzle, I think it varies so much, like even compared to other things. And to me, it just doesn't work having it all on the right or left side, like exclusively on one edge. And so then I started doing it like above the puzzle, but I kind of found.
You're talking about individual puzzle here at this point?
Yes, yeah, sorry. That like when you're looking like past the puzzle, then there's like you have to like look further, so there's things that go into that. So I think like kind of just monitoring and seeing how other people do it is interesting to me, and I've definitely tried certain ways of just having it exclusively on one side, but I always worry that I'm using up too much space at home and that when I get to the competition I'm just not going to have enough space and then I'm going to be like panicking. So I think that's something that I need to get over because I do think I puzzle on a smaller space than you normally get in competition. But in my head, in competition, you get like no space.
And you haven't just like put some tape on your table or whatever.
I've done that, but I always feel like it just doesn't translate very well. But it could just be me thinking too much.
Do you watch a lot of like live streams retrospectively? Like, do you go back and watch things and look for things? Or are you talking to other people? Like, how do you run across things that are things you might want to try?
Definitely talking to other people. occasionally I'll look at a live stream. Like I will say before this nationals, I like watched one like EJJ before and was like, oh, okay, that's interesting how you did that. But I'm not like analyzing film. Like every once in a while I'll just go and see like, oh, where did they put those pieces? Or like, what did they do with that section? But I will say, similar to Connor, as I heard, I do occasionally like race in EJJ. Like I'll put it on the background. And then usually what I do is, because I have a bunch of Ravensburger 500s. So when I'm preparing, I kind of just recycle the ones I already have. So they'll pull out the puzzle and they get to look at it for a while. So then I'll go find one that's like comparable in my head and then do it at the same time.
Interesting. Yeah, the EJJ, for those who don't know, is the Euro Jigsaw Jam, which is their version of speedpuzzling.com sort of virtual competitions here in the US. So 2024 US Nationals, you're in individuals, individual round C, the first one, you placed first in. It's first place. I noticed that your hands were shaking at the end. Do you get like bursts of adrenaline at the very end of a competition, or is that unusual?
Oh no, I usually shake at the end, so I'm shocked that's the only time you noticed it.
And in that particular round, you ended up missing a piece, which, you know, harken back to Nationals 2022.
Yeah, except this time it was on the puzzle, and everyone watching the live stream could see that, except for me, because the puzzle was very dark. No, that was funny. It was very funny to look back, and you could very clearly see it was on the corner. Yeah, some of the comments were like, she didn't try hard enough to look for the piece, and I was like, I was really worried about making it to the final, and I had succeeded in that, so I wasn't worried about the 10 seconds that I was going to lose.
It's true, and you know, to anybody who's doubting you in the live stream, first place.
I mean, it was close. Alice challenged me, and I didn't know it, so that was exciting.
It's true. I do believe that, especially in like competitions at the level you're at, every second counts, right? Because we even see ties, which I never thought would be a thing.
Yeah. I think for the finals, it's definitely a more of a mad scramble. Whereas in a prelim, as long as you're probably going to make it through, it's not as big of a worry about the 10 seconds for the missing piece.
And then you ended up finishing 5th in US Nationals in the individuals.
Yes.
So that seems satisfying.
Yeah. I will say, like, I was very happy with where I placed. But this was another competition where I felt like I kind of got in my own head. One thing that I realized when I opened that image, I had not done an edge all weekend. This wasn't something that I had really experienced until this nationals, but pairing with Andrea, it was great. I didn't have to do an edge. But then when I opened the individual puzzle, I hadn't done an edge since my first competition. And I believe the individual final was last. So I had done many, many puzzles where I had not done an edge or touched an edge. And yeah, that was definitely an experience, because the funniest part is Karen in her video pans to me at one point and she goes, I don't really know what Kelly's doing. And I was like, don't worry, Kelly didn't know what she was doing either. Oh, no. I was really, really just kind of all over the place. And I will say I feel like it was focused a little bit more on in 2024 was like the whole money of getting first. And I don't know, it's a lot of money. I mean, it still is. And at that point, the individual final was last. And in my head, even though I want to say I would never have won, but I was so worried that like I was just going to win all this money and then everyone else wasn't going to get, like, I don't know. It really got in my head about how much like the prize was. And I do think that messed with me a little bit just because we're friends with everyone. And like, I don't know, just because only first place gets money, like I just felt like it was going to be a lot. But again, that was not my image. I was never going to win that, but I do think I didn't feel really great with how I did because I was just kind of scattered the entire time.
So the idea of there being money up for grabs changed the game a little bit?
Yeah, I think probably only for me, just because I was like hyper fixated on it. But like I had already won, credit to my team and Andrea Peng. Like we had already won the pairs and the teams.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like getting in my head and being like, oh, if I win this one too, like that's a lot. I was never going to win, but the fact that I was even thinking about that as I was opening the puzzle was not helpful.
I imagine that is a thing that you've been able to set aside.
Yeah, I told myself this year that that was not going to be a thought in my head.
Nice. And therefore it wasn't?
Yeah.
Wow, good for you. So coming into the pairs for 2024, I feel like your team or your pair expectations are fairly high. Do expectations bother you at all?
Not really. For me, I also think, I don't want to say like people always talk about me in terms of pairs and teams, but I think on an individual level, I haven't had as much pressure. And at least I think for most people in pairs and teams, like there's just not as much pressure because you're with someone else. So Andrew and I wanted to do well, but we knew we could because we had practiced and yeah, we were comfortable. So
do you think that, jumping ahead, spoiler alert, you end up being first in everything in 2025, which, by the way, huge congratulations for that.
Thank you.
Do you feel like now having first as an individual changes the pressure for you?
Not for me. I think also something that after 2024 Nationals, going into Worlds 2024, which I know I'm jumping ahead a little bit, but
we're all over the place.
Like, I think I kind of just wanted to take all of the pressure out of it, if that makes any sense. I was like, the less pressure that I put on myself, the better I'll do. That was my hypothesis going into Worlds 2024. And especially like my preparation for that was not as much as I would have liked because school was super busy. So I was like, okay, I'm in Spain. Like, we're just going to give it a go and do as best as I can. And my goal before the individual final in that was to get as calm as I could. Like, I was like, okay, we're just going to try. Because before I thought that the nerves that I got before a competition were good. And like, I needed to kind of keep those or else it wasn't going to be beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
But I was like, that, like, just keeping myself as calm as possible. Like, the nerves are already going to be there when I start. So just trying to like, kind of, like I said, bring the heart rate down, get as calm as possible. I wanted to see how that worked. And going back, sorry, I don't go back, but 2023, another thing I talked about, like just outside noise, they stalled for like 10 minutes. I don't remember if they showed it on the live stream, but we sat down and we sat there for like 10 minutes because the live stream wasn't working.
Yes.
And so by the time we started, all my adrenaline had been gone. And I was like so tired because like I was so like amped up to go. And then we just sat there for forever. And I didn't want that to happen again. And it is variable. Like, things come up, like, and the organizers aren't going to start the competition until they're ready. I totally understand that. So I told myself, okay, you're just going to sit here. And like, I developed like a calm playlist that only has a few songs on it. And I was like, okay, we're going to sit here and listen to this. And then once they start doing all the instructions and stuff, like at this point, I know when the competition is going to start because I've been to so many of them. And at that point is when you switch over to your fast music and your playlist and go. But I think just kind of keeping myself calm for that interim of like sitting at the table before the competition starts really helped me.
So it turns out you didn't need all those nerves beforehand.
No, the nerves will always be there. Is my, like, the competition is nerve-wracking enough. So.
And then when they count down from 5 to 1, like your adrenaline still kicks in.
Yeah. But also, and this is another thing that I've tried is, and I think most people experience this, is the shaking when flipping over pieces. I think that's the worst. It's even worse than at the end. And I think it slows me down personally. I don't know. Other people said it might make them faster, but like just like shaking so much. So I think that's another reason why I've tried to calm myself down, because then hopefully maybe I'm not shaking as much when I'm trying to flip over all the pieces and make sure I've gotten everything out of the bag and putting the box up, because that is a little more technical, I guess, than other aspects.
Yeah, so that dump of adrenaline is actually not accelerating your hand movements as much as it is sort of adding noise to your ability to control pieces.
Yeah, I think so. I don't know. There's a lot of like pieces I flip over and then I flip over again and then they're the wrong way again. So yeah, it just depends though. I think some competitions are better than others and it's hard. You can't practice for it. So
because the situation is unique when you're actually in competition.
Exactly.
Can you characterize the difference between something like maybe the California State competition or other in-person competitions you've done and something like nationals or worlds? Because Alice has said, and you have said as well, that there's something qualitatively different about being on these stages. Do you have a sense of what that is?
My personal opinion is it's the cameras. California State doesn't have, I mean, they might be like live streaming it, but like, I think knowing how big the production is and how many people's eyes are going to be on you, I think that plays a really big part in it. And a lot of people that I don't know and don't know me are going to comment on what I've done. And I think it is kind of getting ahead of yourself, but you also have to prepare yourself that other people are going to talk about you. And I guess you can like not read the comments and not go through that. But yeah, I think that is something that is unique to the bigger competitions.
So ESPN comes rolling in 2028 or whatever. That may ramp it up even another level.
I can't even imagine. And I think hopefully by that point I'd be comfortable enough that but yeah, I think it's just all the thousands of people who watch, which I'm very grateful for, but it is a little nerve-wracking.
Are you getting used to the cameras or do you find them? I guess there's two parts of it. I can imagine there's a certain amount of intimidation, sort of like you've talked about, of them being there. There's also sort of a logistical problem of them being there, right? They're in the way. They're sort of distracting visually. They're definitely signaling that somebody's about to do something. Sometimes that's you. Are you starting to be able to just flow with that?
Yes and no. I'm always aware of it. Like going back to 2023, my first time at Worlds, in the postcard puzzle when I finished and no one knew I finished, the cameras weren't on me at all. And so in my head, I was like, oh, I must be doing so bad. And like, I thought I was doing great. That was my first puzzle I've ever done sub 40 on my first try. So, and yeah. And so I thought I was moving very quickly, but I was like, there's no cameras. I must be doing so I must not be doing as great as I think I am. And it was just because the cameras weren't there. There was like a documentary crew that year. So there was like extra cameras. So the live stream cameras kind of got mixed up. But like in 2024 Worlds, when the cameras were on me in the finals, I was shocked. I was like, because I feel like in like the Worlds final, the camera's only on you if you're doing at least semi decently. So that was kind of a boost, but it is a boost. But at the same time, I also feel like sometimes that's when you just start can't seeing pieces, or not being able to see where pieces go. So I think I've talked about this in the past, but like sometimes if I'm like frozen by the cameras, I'll try to start sorting or just move on to something else because sometimes they do kind of make me freeze still. But it is encouraging. If they're on you, you know that hopefully you might be doing something well. So it's kind of a double-edged sword.
But a couple of things that I noticed in Worlds 2024, you are using both hands a lot. Is that something that you had to develop? Because I noticed it especially at this year's Nationals. I'm watching you do no-look piece placement where you're like looking to the left and you have a piece in your hand and you place it somewhere off to the right. And I've noticed that at least in I think it was one of the Worlds 2024 events, you finish the puzzle by putting two things in one in each hand simultaneously. So is this a natural skill of yours? Is that a trained skill?
It's definitely something that I worked on. So going back to when I first started, I think it was Andrew Bradbert, who was someone who I think went to the Nationals in the 80s. Mm-hmm. He was talking about the winner of the Nationals back then. And like someone asked him like what their trick was. And he was like, oh, she used both hands. So this is something that I've been aware of since I first started speed puzzling. But it isn't something that I've really started to try to incorporate until more recently, just because it's great if both hands can move, but your brain then also needs to try and be in two places at once. Mm-hmm. So I think it's an interesting thing to contend with. And the way that I've kind of worked on it is I'm like, if I can get at least some pieces in with my left hand, that's a win. And this is something that I've thought about a lot, where, like you said, the no look is just being able to have a sense of, it's called proprioception, is like knowing where your limbs are without actually looking at them, and trying to improve that, of trying to like be able to accurately put in a piece while it's in your periphery. Because then you can start looking with your other hand where the next piece goes. And this is something that I've really only been able to do in like the last like 20% of a puzzle. I've not found success with it earlier just because there's too many things going on and trying to like figure out what to actually do and like what like sorting and but yeah, one big thing that I did, I think before nationals this year, is Andrea and I both talked about like just holding pieces in our one hand. And I would do this too. Like we both would do it, which is why I made a great pair. And one thing I realized for individuals, I was like, I just need to put those down, because that's something that Kristen doesn't do. Kristen isn't holding pieces in her hand. So
Right.
like a ton of pieces. So I was like, if I just put those down, because sometimes I'd pick up 5 pieces and then I'd start working on another section. And then I just have 5 pieces in my hand.
That's true. If you're constantly changing focus in the best way, then those are just dragging you behind.
Yeah. I was like, why do I just have 5 random pieces in my hand right now? So
Emotional support pieces.
Yeah, exactly. So I think keeping my left hand open has helped me start using it a little bit more.
Something I also saw you do for the first time, as far as I noticed it, was having pieces in your hand, but in an open-handed sort of way, in pairs. I think of that as sort of the Andrea Peng maneuver, where she's got pieces in her hand, but they're like, it's like mini micro tray, right? So is that a new thing for you, or is that something that you had been doing and I only just saw it?
No, this is something we talked about as a pair, when both of us, like I said, we do kind of like to hold on to pieces, but at the end, if you're looking for a specific piece, it's not that much extra work to open your hand and just have the pieces laid out flat. And then if there is a piece that you're kind of looking for, then if it's on the other person's hand. So I think you may just have, I don't know if I have done it in the past, maybe you just haven't seen me do it, but it is something we've kind of talked about as a pair to do.
I'm going to skip all the way forward to nationals this year. So you've had some distance from this event, not a lot of distance, but some. I think it's fair to say it's a pretty unique accomplishment that you have done, sweeping all 3, which means that not only you've shown strong skills with pairs, strong skills with a team, this reinforces that you are strong as an individual. How do you feel about it a few weeks on?
Yeah, I mean, my team and my pair, that's credit to who I'm with. The Reuter sisters, Jean and Kathy, and Andrea as well, and the team. I mean, thank you to Becca for joining the board, I guess. She is irreplaceable on a team, but I was happy to be able to attempt to fill her shoes. And so those ones, there are wins. They're not personal wins. So yeah, I really do just have to say it was a really great weekend to get to puzzle with all of them. I think the individual event, I kind of have said before, like I just wanted to be able to do a puzzle well for myself. And I know it's kind of vague, but what I mean by that is like just not getting caught up, not trying to listen to all the noise. And I was successful at that for myself. I will say, like, even though I've made the endeavor, like I laugh about it now, but I was so worried when I opened the box. I was like so excited it was a Develsa that I was convinced that the bottom half of the box you don't need. I was convinced I like threw it at Alice, who was sitting to my left. And so for the first like probably 7 minutes of the competition, in my head, I'm like, oh no, I just like threw this box at Alice. Like it definitely hit her. Like, oh no. And like those are things that are going through my head that you just cannot account for at all. And it's funny, we laughed about it like at the end, because I asked her like almost immediately after we were done, and she goes, no, I think I threw mine at you too. So
this is carryover from your Winter Carnival experience.
Yes, it was totally in my head. Yeah, that is really funny. There are just certain external factors that you can't control for, but I was happy that I was able to do the puzzle well and was able to finish first. I don't know. I really want everyone to be able to do their best, and I was happy that I was able to achieve that. But
Did this feel like a solid accomplishment in terms of like your own sort of inner satisfaction with doing the puzzle? I'm going to back up just a little bit. So you were first in your heat as well. So you're first in your heat, first in the finals for individuals. Did those feel like the kind of accomplishment in terms of being a good puzzle done well that you were looking for?
yeah, I think so. There's always things you can improve on. And I think that's just like my personality is like, there's always something I could have done better. But I was happy with the result. I mean, I don't know. I think for me, it's more about how I feel doing the puzzle rather than where I end up. And like, I was happy with where I ended up, but it's more satisfying to me if I do the puzzle well and still don't win than if I did the puzzle poorly and won, if that makes sense.
It does. Is there a puzzle that you feel like you did particularly well, but wasn't a winning puzzle?
I mean, the world's final. We'll just go with that one.
This last year's world final?
Yeah, Kristen still won by 5 minutes compared to me. So, I don't know if we need to get that in. But
Tell me about your experience with the last puzzle in the team's final, the Jewel Jungle.
This is where I probably differ from a lot of people. I enjoy things like that, like for a good challenge. I actually recently redid that one, like this week at some point. It's a tough speed puzzle. It's a tough teams puzzle, although I'd much rather do it in a team than in any other competition. I really enjoyed it because I wouldn't say I enjoyed it so much, but
you didn't loathe it as much as other people, like myself.
Yeah, I think it's really just about like trying to find different patterns. And like at some point, I was like, oh, there's like this slightly dark orange in this one corner. So like, let me grab all the dark orange. One thing that I've done, and I did this in the individual final too, and I kind of talked about this a bit too, is like trying to improve my pick and place, which is something that I kind of did. But before Worlds 2024, I made a conscious effort and I was like, on a 500 piece puzzle, I should be able to find where a piece goes within like 5 seconds, we'll say. And if I don't find it, I should just put it down because it's not really going to help me at this point. And so I think for teams, that's something, it's much harder in a 1,000 piece puzzle, obviously, because there's twice as many pieces. And the image is still the same size pretty much. But I do think that practice definitely helped with an image like that. If there was something I could recognize, like trying to then put it in the place where it went. But it was really just a team effort. And like after you got the main components down, it was really just try and find a piece that you remember where its neighbor goes. And then at the end, shape sorting.
It was the slowest I had seen you and pretty much everybody on your team go in quite some time, was filling in the last parts of that puzzle.
Yeah.
Like that puzzle made it seem that even pros like yourself weren't just knocking it out. Like I was like, oh, that is an actual legit hard puzzle.
Yeah, no, I remember when we were doing the like when we had finally shape sorted, like it's still like it helped a ton, but I still like there was pieces I was looking for that I just couldn't find, and they were there. Like we had all of them at the end, but yeah, I think images like that where there's just so many different colors and every piece has 5 different colors on it and they're all the same. They're tricky, but I appreciated the challenge.
I was going to say, so as a team's finals at the U.S. national competition, do you feel like that level of difficulty is appropriate?
That's a tough question. I mean, it's hard for me to say because the board only gets so many pieces or puzzles to pick from. So I can't really speak to whether or not.
Right. But I guess I'm more curious is about whether you felt like, so yes, the board has some restrictions on the kinds of puzzles that they can choose and the quantity of puzzles they can choose. Absolutely. But I know Val is sort of repeatedly on the record about saying that, U.S. Nationals finals are meant to be difficult. And this was difficult. And I guess I'm just more curious as to whether you felt like this level of difficulty is appropriate for the sort of end stage of a nationals competition.
I mean, I think it's just hard for me to gauge. Like, how many teams finished?
47.
And there was 100 in the final?
Correct.
So I feel like that's reasonable. If it was like Boston, the Paris final in 2023, where 5 teams finished, I think it's a different story.
That abstract landscape or cityscape.
Yes. But I feel like if half the teams finish, that's pretty good. But I don't know. I think I'm all for more challenging puzzles just because I think that they're more interesting. So I think that I will always lean that way. But I think it's hard for me to kind of generalize to everyone who's there because I think everyone has probably a different opinion.
Do you enjoy the fact that a competition at that level is going to have comparatively harder puzzles?
Yeah, I like it. Like the Canadian Nationals were this weekend and their final puzzle, that looked, I didn't watch the competition, but I saw that and I was like, oh, that's a tough image because it was an abstract, or not abstract, but it was an art painting.
Yeah.
And when the lines aren't very defined, it makes it difficult. I've done the artist, a few puzzles from the artist before. But I think it's a fun, I mean, even the World's final this year with the Tigers and the Oasis, I think that was still a good challenge for everyone there. If it's like a gradient or some of these puzzles where people are first timing, like getting first times of under 30 minutes, I think those are probably unrealistic for a competition too, just with the volunteers and trying to track everyone's times. So I do think it's fun when they're a little bit more challenging.
Last real question I'll ask you. I did a sort of 12-month rolling average of your completion times, going back as far as I have data. And since that California competition, you've knocked 10 minutes off of your average time. So you went from an average time of 54 minutes-ish to 43 minutes-ish. Do you credit anything with that? And that's just on the individual side.
I mean, I will say I think it's kind of some of the things I've talked about where it's just kind of like slow improvements. Mm-hmm. But I will say, like, I don't know, I felt like at times, like I remember when I first started speed puzzling, like breaking an hour was like, that was a win to me. Like it took me quite a few competitions to break an hour and I was like, oh my gosh. But like then breaking 50 wasn't even like a thought. And I think I did that before the 2022 Nationals. I had broken 40 or 50 on a puzzle that I had done before previously. And I didn't think I could do that. And then at Worlds in 2023, I apologize, I got the postcard and like, I didn't think breaking 40 was a possibility for me. Like other people did it, but I didn't think that was something I could do. And I think that is due in part to when I'm at competitions, I move so much faster. Like my times at home, I mean, I don't really publish them because I just can't move that fast at home. I just can't get the energy to move that fast at home. Right. And I will also say, I just want to take this moment to say a lot of times when I practice, usually it's after like work or school. And like sometimes I just like stop. Like I'll get 15 minutes into a puzzle and like it's just not, I'm not into it. And I'll just stop. And I think like doing that really helps like preserve my enjoyment out of it. Because sometimes I'll like stop, turn the timer off and I'll finish it slowly. But sometimes I'll just put it away. Like sometimes I'll be like, okay, I'll come back to this tomorrow or I'll box it up. And I think that's something really important is like, if you just aren't really having the best day, like you're probably not going to have the best time. And then it's not going to feel so great when you look at the time and you're like, oh, well, I was tired. I do my best practice on the weekends when I have like a full day. Sure. And during the week, I just find it more difficult to practice because I just get tired.
Yeah. And as you said, what you're protecting is your enjoyment of this activity. I imagine if it becomes not fun for you, you won't want to do it.
Yeah.
And therefore bailing out when it's not fun preserves that for you.
Yeah.
I've heard other folks say this as well, is that if this becomes work, it's not the thing I want to be doing. And that's the important part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I do just want to make another comment on practicing is I think something that I've realized is I've found other ways to practice that aren't doing a 500-piece puzzle and timing it.
That's right. You were talking about doing things in your head at Nationals. Is that what you mean?
Yes. Yeah, that's part of it. Like I had mentioned to you on the live stream that like at this point, I've done so many puzzles in my life that the dexterity isn't really necessary. Like I talked about like working on my left hand, and like sometimes when I'm sitting casually doing like a 1,000-piece puzzle, I'll just use my left hand for a while. But yeah, it's like what I said, like just kind of reviewing certain things, like just thinking about how I could do things better, or in like competitions that haven't been successful in the past, like things that not unsuccessful, but have not done as well as I wanted to in the past, like trying to figure out how to improve. And that's part of it. And I think also when I'm like sitting doing thousands casually, one of my favorite things to do, and I want to know if this will help other people, so that's what I want to say, is like if I have a section where it's like, we'll just say it's a blue sky, there's like 30 pieces of blue sky, or maybe even less than that, 20. I'll look at the pieces and I'll kind of try to just sit there and look at the pieces and look at like a hole, I guess, in the puzzle.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just try and match them up with my mind. Instead of like actually trying the pieces, is like actually looking at the shape and trying to figure out where it goes without actually physically trying the piece.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it helps pay attention to the shape of the pieces a little bit more rather than like just like trial and error. And I know that's how some people prefer. Some people who are very successful prefer to just do trial and error. But I do think it's kind of a fun exercise if people want to try, just like looking at and then finally when you figure out which piece goes there, you pick it up and you just put it in. And sometimes I'm not always right, but sometimes I'm not right. But
it would be interesting to know if people tried that or do that, if they find that mental activity becomes easier over time, because that would be really, I imagine, where the payoff is that if you can more visualize where what goes where. Like if you can get practiced at that, if you can get better and better at just saying like, I can see where all of those pieces go, then maybe it becomes sort of innate and it becomes sort of the skill that you're trying to develop. I think of all of these things as like driving a car, right? Learning to drive a car is about mastering something and then pushing it into like the back of your brain where it just kind of runs on autopilot. So I think about things like this as like, if you were just to do this mental exercise of trying to put things into place, can you get faster and faster at that such that it becomes a tool that you can readily use as you're puzzling? And maybe it doesn't even have to be that fast for it to be just another tool in your arsenal, because that's really what you're looking for, is another opportunity to solve a problem.
Yeah, I've just been asked a lot on how to get better. And it's something I've really thought about, because I think I've kind of just developed my own methods over the years, and not everything works for everyone. So I've tried to think about things that I do that other people may be able to do that will help.
Okay, let's go into the speed round.
Okay.
Gradients, pattern, or fur?
Pattern.
Illustration or photo?
Photo.
Jumble, busy, or landscape?
Landscape.
I was not expecting that.
Yeah, I know.
Round or square?
The square.
Wood or cardboard?
Cardboard.
You ever do wood puzzles?
I own one. They don't quite fit in my budget, unfortunately.
Individuals, pairs, or teams?
We'll go pairs.
Ribbon cut or random cut?
Random.
300, 500, or 1,000?
1,000.
Do you have a current favorite brand?
Cloudberries. It has to be Cloudberries.
Do you have a favorite puzzle?
That's a good question. I will say Cloudberries. I really like their puzzle Brunch. It's mostly just a bunch of colors and abstract shapes of brunch.
Kelly Walter, it's been insightful and I really appreciate it.
Yeah, this has been so great. Thank you for having me.
You can follow Kelly on Instagram at kw.puzzles. Thanks for listening to Peace Talks. You can follow the podcast on Instagram at peace_talks, and you can send email to peacetalkscast@gmail.com.